Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the St. Louis podcast. As always, I'm Eric Brown. We're going to have some fun here today. Man, is everybody up in arms this week. I will say that next week, episode 100 of the St. Louis podcast should be some fun. I'm planning that as of about 5 minutes ago when I was reminded that it is next week. So with that said, we'll have some fun. We'll have some fun guests on this week. It is just going to be myself. We got some news updates. I'm going to talk about St. Louis here to start it off. I think we have to talk about the OpenAI situation because Sam Altman looks like an absolute jackass now. So we'll talk about some stuff. All right, so let's get into this Rams settlement. Because off the bat, this was all the way back in 2021 where, we got $790 million legal settlement, of course, from Kroenke. So they finally came out with a plan to actually use that money. And what is interesting is the fact that they're only allocating $280 million of that $800 million that was supposedly earning interest throughout the last 3 years, which the market's done really well. So you would think that money should be a lot more than that original $790 million. And obviously, lawyers get some and whatever else goes into it. And maybe I am just completely off basis. I don't understand how this stuff is appropriated and sent. And that could 100% be the case. But my question is, where's the rest of the money? Because if, let's just say, lawyers get $200 million, right? We appropriate, or we have a plan to spend $280 million. That still leaves, $300 million. Not accounting for any interest. So $50 million to go to the city work fund force, $30 million of that for childcare and the rest for job training and education. $50 million going towards revitalizing struggling neighborhoods in North St. Louis and Southeast St. Louis. $40 million would go to upgrades of the city's crumbling water system. I live downtown. Yeah. I mean, there's pipe issues all the time down there. $40 million allocated for North St. Louis to redevelop vacant lots with new homes and small businesses. Improvements in North St. Louis, Southeast St. Louis, and downtown would include tens of millions of dollars for mobility infrastructure to improve streets and sidewalks. Spokesperson, everybody's not going to get everything they want, but everybody is going to ensure that communities that have been neglected for over 70 years will not be that way anymore. We'll see if that money goes far enough for that. But I don't really have an issue with this. I think this is good. I think this is good for St. Louis. I mean, people want to move back towards the city. I've been saying this forever. And there's a lot of areas in St. Louis, obviously the areas that everyone kind of stays around, but there is a ton of areas in St. Louis that needs a ton of help. And we just listed out some of those areas here. And then we obviously have money going to other areas as well, because that didn't add up to 280. Where's the rest of it going to go? $30 million to expand the dome at America Center. I don't know if I agree with this. I mean, the dome has been outdated since the Rams left. And 5 to 10 years before the Rams left. So expanding it, interesting. $169 million to St. Louis County. And I just went over kind of that $70 million to St. Louis City. So if you have any thoughts on this, you can find a link on like stl.gov somewhere. Just go to Google. You could search it. There's a feedback form that you could submit if you have feedback about where this money's going. I think it's about time that they figured out where the money's going. It seems like it's the case for most government officials now to sit in a room and talk, but never actually take any action and get shit done. So it's about damn time. This is good though. We've had plenty of people come onto this podcast and talk about, different nonprofits and different organizations that, support a lot of these areas that need a lot of help, because of course they just don't get as much money as other areas because not as much tax money or whatever else is being generated in those areas. And so it just continues on a downward cycle. And of course, as money continues to move out of that area, it continues to go downhill, which is the same issue that I think a lot of these states, New York, California, all of these other states and cities that you have, like Los Angeles, for example, where you have, say you have 1,000 people that are millionaires leave, that's a lot of tax money just from that small percentage of people that used to live there, right? And St. Louis has a lot of issues, but we also have a lot of great areas. So I'm glad that this money is being put to hopefully good use. We'll see, obviously we're going to be able to appropriate those or, allocate those funds to those different areas. I just hope that that money actually gets put to good use when it gets down to the actual, investments that they're making instead of going to, their friend, right, that owns a business that gets, $10 million. And then all of a sudden you don't know where the money went. And we're back at square one. So we'll see how, what goes on here. This is interesting. I'm curious what everyone's thoughts are. It seems like, for the most part, for the people that I've talked to and also online, it seems like this is something that, everyone's in agreement on for the most part. Usually it's like 50-50, obviously, like most things nowadays. You got one side and you got the other, but it seems like everyone's in fairly, in agreement on this. So I'd say that's a good thing. Moving on. My mom used to work for the special school district, and I have a lot of, a lot of friends that work for the special school district right now, and they've been kind of talking about some issues, but it in terms of, number one, positions being unfilled, and they're being left unfilled. So now what the SSD is doing, supposedly, now this is all just, stuff I've been reading. Let me see if I can get this. So, there's people having issues because they're getting hired. Maybe they've worked in whatever. They've worked at Eureka High School for 20 years and now they're having to be moved up to North County. And this is causing issues with the internal staff. But it seems like from what I've been reading is that really North County, from a special school district perspective, has never been supported like the way that other school districts or, other areas of St. Louis have been in the past that have more money. Now, the issue with this the issue comes back to the fact that SSD gets their money from all of these areas, right? And they pool that money together. Now, this could go back to the fact, again, of what I was saying before, is that in these areas, in, let's just say, Eureka or Fenton or whatever, or Chesterfield, they have more tax money going to SSD potentially. Let's just say potentially. This is hypothetical, but I think it adds up if you look at it. And so then SSD allocates more teachers there, which of course is unfair to the students in these other schools that have the same disabilities that the students do in the schools that have been supported apparently better, especially than those North County schools. That's bad policy, right? Because that just means that those areas that need more help is getting even less help than they're getting in those areas that, let's just say hypothetically, don't need as much help, right? So you have people up in arms, but I think this really goes back to the fact of SSD not having their shit under control, because if you had these positions filled, then you wouldn't have to be pulling teachers that maybe have been working in jobs, in these areas. They live in these areas now. Okay, you're going to have to drive some people a lot further, I guess, for their job on a daily basis, which does suck. It's going to make, some of these teachers, therapists, whatever, people have to drive further. So it's going to affect people. And obviously SSD, professionals are upset about it. I'm not talking about all of SSD, of course. I'm not saying everyone's upset about it. Like I said, this stems from an issue that has been prevalent apparently in the SSD for a long time. So it seems like the policy that they're trying to push is good, but potentially they're just not doing it in the best way, which makes sense for, most educational systems. And so there's a few things that I thought were interesting about this, which is one, that SSD apparently is, they had a $74 million deficit last year. Now, this is alleged. I was reading this. The previous superintendent embezzled money and was allowed to resign, but not prosecuted. A significant raise was given to staff to try and increase hiring due to significant staffing issues, which are worse in the North County area. Didn't work, so they're having to reassign staff because there aren't enough people to cover these districts. The current budget is not sufficient to cover the raises, so they're operating in a deficit and had to institute a hiring freeze, which I just talked about, for most positions, also leading to need to shift staff rather than expand. General funding cuts across various sources. So it's a bunch of issues that have just come full circle all at once, and now they're trying to be handled. But the problem is, like most things, apparently they don't have the money in order to do their job properly. So the question is, like most things, it seems like, especially with colleges and things like that, you look at the administration cost has skyrocketed over, say, the last 20 to 30 years. You can look this up. And the percentage of administration cost does not nearly coordinate to the percentage of students increase that are going to these institutes. And I could guess, and I may be wrong, that the SSD has potentially an overhead on administration and not the actual people that are in these schools doing the work. And obviously you need administration. But like most things, there could potentially be too much, which of course is limiting the actual money that's getting into the, hands essentially of those students that need that help, that are paying for that help. So we'll see what happens with SSD. Because I was always, I live in a box, right? I don't know everything. I don't know everything about SSD all the time. My mom hasn't worked there in a while, so I don't know the ins and outs. But I always was under the assumption that SSD was ran pretty well. So this kind of highlights just another issue, that's going on. It seems like they're trying to do what they can with what they have. But of course, it's upsetting those people, or at least some of those people in SSD. So we'll see what happens there. Last thing, Missouri. I'm curious what your all thoughts are on Missouri lawmakers. Again, they're trying to put the St. Louis Police Department underneath state control, which is interesting. I don't really see how this benefits us as citizens of St. Louis or as Missouri. It seems like we don't want the state to control all of, the police department for one reason or another. It kind of just gets my brain going of, all right, it's a little authoritative. I don't know if I like that. So it seems like it's stuff that they keep trying to do, right? Because I believe they started this 2 or 3 years ago. This comment's like, the people of Missouri, I want the state to have less power. Also the people of Missouri, yeah, the police should be funded by the state. Finally, my taxes are doing something. So what's interesting is that Kansas City PD is under state control, but they're funded by Kansas City. So they're funded by Kansas City, but they're state ran. So I would say that they have less amount of say in their police department that they would if they were locally controlled. And I also feel like they have less responsibility if they're state controlled, right? They can just, it's not a local person of KC, right? You can just blame it up the board, blame it as a state, state problem, right? Not as a KC problem. So, of course, as always, St. Louis Post-Dispatch. I can't read it because I don't want to pay. But, this is, I don't see the pros. Because it seems like I just saw a stat that KC had an increase, small percent increase in crime. And St. Louis was actually down last year fairly considerably. But, I'd have to look at where those numbers actually came from, right? They were just on a spreadsheet that was shared with me. And of course, numbers can lie, right? But KC up, what I saw was KC up in crime, St. Louis down in crime, KC state, St. Louis. And St. Louis PD has a bunch of its own problems, right? The fact that we continue to not have enough, number one. The fact that I'm sure, there's always been hiring issues with people not wanting to work the St. Louis PD, which also makes sense. And then you have issues with, regardless of people being arrested for offenses, just like in other cities that are continuing to have issues, people are not going to jail, going to prison. They are just let back out on the street to continue to do the same thing over and over again. Which leads me into this whole ICE, everyone's up in ICE. Right? Everyone is up in arms about this whole ICE situation. Everyone's freaking out. Everyone thinks, well, not everyone. Obviously, you have one, people voted for Trump. Obviously, a majority of them are like, obviously, this is what I voted for. And then you have the other side that is absolutely up in arms about this. And what I will say is that this stems from a problem of, if you've seen where they've been, this stems from a problem of sanctuary cities. Because, of course, the problem is, if you guys aren't aware, in a sanctuary city, obviously, that city, Chicago, or New York City, if, someone is on that wants to be arrested by ICE, that city will not work with ICE, right? So they get arrested. The person, ICE wants them. They're in jail. All they have to do is send one or two ICE agents to go arrest this person. They don't have to go into a person's home. They don't have to go to where they work. And they don't have to have, guns drawn. They don't have to have a squad of 8 people to go knock on a door. Instead, they could have just arrested this person.
Hey there, St. Louis podcast listeners. We've got some exciting news from our friends over at Farmers Insurance of St. Louis, led by the man, the myth, the legend, Mark Lee of Farmers Insurance.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking for a job or to own your own business under a brand that everyone and their cousin is familiar with, Mark Lee with Farmers Insurance of St. Louis is recruiting insurance agency owners here in St. Louis for their Farmers Insurance Mentorship Program.
And as many of you are aware, Garrett and I have owned quite a few successful and award-winning businesses over the years. And in a past life, one of those was a farmers insurance agency out of Chesterfield, Missouri.
Eric and I know firsthand how hard it is to start a business under a brand that no one has heard of and convince consumers and businesses to trust that you're an authority figure in your industry.
And as many of you know, we own an award-winning marketing firm, Vi Media, the one that Garrett was just discussing. And building that company's reputation literally took years. We're still building it to this day, and it's been 8 years in the making. However, with the Trusted Farmers Insurance Agency name on the building, we got started when we started our farmers insurance agency, the trust was already built and has been for 96 years.
And if you can't do math, that means Farmers Insurance has been around since 1928. Luckily, you don't need to be a human calculator to get rich as an owner of your very own Farmers Insurance agency.
Nope. All you have to do is reach out to the one and only Mark Lee, the leader of Farmers Insurance in the greater St. Louis metropolitan area.
That's right. So ensure he continues to sponsor our show and your favorite podcast, the St. Louis Podcast, by quitting your job today and calling Mark Lee. I wouldn't even wait for him to answer your call. Call your boss now, quit, and become your very own business owner.
Visit insurancecareerstl.com. That is insurancecareerstl.com. Should we spell it out?
Yes. It would
INSURANCE. Career, CAREER, STL.com, insurancecareerstl.com. Go there now. Back to the podcast.
And wait, insurancecareerstl.com.
Back to the podcast. When they were already in jail or under custody of the city. Instead, they are released. And then ICE has to, now that they can actually go do their job, it now is to find them outside of jail or in prison or being under custody, which obviously you could see the issue. And everyone now, people kind of are saying, hey, the problem with this is that people that, say aren't violent criminals, of course, the ones that they're trying to go after, the ones that have rap sheets, right? You can look at, a lot of the people that they're arresting. Also, ICE themselves, ICE agents have done interviews, so you can go and look at that. So 52% were considered criminal arrests. So the problem right now is once the ICE agents have to go into a person's home or whatever, renting, wherever it is, and they go in and arrest that person, and there's 2 other people with them as well. Well, now they're getting arrested as well. And that simply stems from the fact of sanctuary cities not working with ICE. Because those people that say are illegal immigrants, but let's just say are working or even paying taxes, whatever, they wouldn't have had this issue if they're a sister, brother, cousin, friend, whatever of this person that ICE did want, right? And now they're caught up in it, which sucks. But what are we supposed to do? Right? ICE doesn't know. You have these other people with them. They could also be criminals. They could also be whatever. Or they could just be an innocent bystander. The problem is we've let it get to this point. We wouldn't have had this issue if we would have handled it properly. And I don't see an issue with arresting illegal immigrants that have violent crimes. That's not a hot take. They know you're a gang member. Okay, great. Get them out. Now, my problem is going to become, okay, let's just say they start from the top, right? They take care of all of those people, which apparently there's millions. So that's going to take absolutely forever in and of itself. Because they're arresting, I think they're trying to arrest, 800 people a day or something like that, which is a ton. No, so they had 1,200 arrests on Monday, about 1,200 arrests. So they're arresting a lot. If there's millions, though, that's obviously do the math. It's going to take absolutely forever. The other problem, obviously, we need to address is, okay, what if you are that cousin, brother, whatever, of this illegal immigrant that is a criminal that we do want out, but you are a working and paying member of the society. You've been here for whatever, 5, 8, 10 years. Is it fair for you to get arrested and then not have, number one, is it fair to get arrested? Number two, obviously, I guess technically you're breaking the law. So the answer is yes. But number two, we should have something in place for them to become a legal citizen if they are a contributing member to society and, they've been here and they don't have any criminal history. right? Aren't those the people we do want here? So we have to be careful. And I think that's where a lot of people are up in arms about, because it's like, well, this could get out of control. They could just start arresting everybody. So it's all fear mongering right now. It's all fear mongering. Or maybe it's not. I mean, we can clip this in 4 years, I guess, and see where we're at. I could be wrong. I never said I'm right. These are just my opinions, folks. All right. What do we got? So let's talk about DeepSeek, OpenAI. So OpenAI says it has evidence China's DeepSeek used its model to train competitor. Yeah. I mean, didn't OpenAI practically scan the entire internet to train their models? I don't see how they're in a position to complain. OpenAI didn't pay me for my content, or you for your content if you're listening. OpenAI just scanned it, and they learned, and they built something. And now they're upset that a Chinese company with $10 million in processors made something that is potentially similar to OpenAI, which costs, obviously, I don't even know the number now. And then now, of course, they're trying to ban it. So let's read into this. So OpenAI says it has found evidence that Chinese artificial intelligence startup DeepSeek used the U.S. company's proprietary models to train its own open source competitor as concerns grow over potential breach of intellectual property. San Francisco-based ChatGPT maker told the Financial Times it had seen some evidence of distillation, which it suspects to be from DeepSeek. The technique is used by developers to obtain better performance on smaller models by using outputs from larger, more capable ones, allowing them to achieve similar results on specific tasks at a much lower cost. It's a common practice in the industry, but the concern was that DeepSeek may be doing it to build its own rival model, which is a breach of OpenAI terms of service. The issue is when you take it out of the platform and are doing it to create your own model for your own purposes, said one person close to OpenAI. OpenAI declined to comment further or provide details of its evidence. In terms of service states, users cannot copy any of its services or use output to develop models that compete with OpenAI. DeepSeek's release of its R1 reasoning model has surprised markets as well as investors and technology companies in Silicon Valley. It's built on shoestring models, have attained high rankings and comparable results to leading U.S. models. Shares in NVIDIA fell 17%, of course, on Monday, as we saw, wiping almost $600 billion off its market value. Tech companies are overvalued right now. I'm not a financial advisor, but if you look at, you just look at what the total market cap of NVIDIA is, does it make sense? I don't know. Tesla doesn't make sense. I don't know. I think there's a couple stocks that essentially make up the stock market right now, and they continue to be pumped. And I've heard this, and maybe I've already talked about this. Who knows? I've heard that actually it's an issue. Like, we've talked about index funds, right, forever as like one of the staples that you can invest in, but all of the index funds invest in the same stocks. So are we almost creating a perpetual issue of continuing to invest in the same stocks? Everyone's just investing in the same stocks, and it's just inflating the actual market cap and value of these stocks. Office market value on fears that big investments in an expensive AI hardware might not be needed, right? And like I said, the reason that they might not be needed is because they have what DeepSeek spent, $10 million on H800s or H8000s, whatever. Something it's GPUs we can't get here. And they didn't have to spend that much to make this model, right? They didn't have to spend billions of dollars on processors to make this work. Of course, NVIDIA did recover a little bit on, half I shouldn't even say half because that's not correct. They recovered 9% on Tuesday. Because, of course, in order to cover a 17% loss, you have to gain, what, 34%? That's right. Do your math. OpenAI and his partner Microsoft investigated accounts believed DeepSeek's last year, and they were using OpenAI as an application programming interface API and blocked their access on suspicion of distillation that violated the terms of service. Microsoft also declined to comment. All right, there we go. See, DeepSeek said it used just 2,048 NVIDIA H800 graphics cards and spent $5.6 million to train its V3 model with 671 billion parameters, a fraction of what OpenAI and Google spent to train comparably sized models. Some experts said the model generated responses that indicated it would train on outputs from OpenAI's GT4, which would violate its terms of service. So I think the bigger thing to take away from this is the fact that DeepSeek spent $5.6 million to train its model. $5.6 million. Let's see what we can get here. OpenAI spent $80 to $100 million training GPT-4. Doesn't really seem like there's a good number here to be found, unless I did a little bit more research. But regardless, they spent significantly less. And of course, they didn't have to use that many GPUs to get it done, which goes against like everything that we've been talking about with AI and having to build out these huge, essentially GPU centers that are massively cooled. It seems like maybe we don't need as much as we originally thought, which of course is why NVIDIA's stock price dropped. We also got the U.S. Navy has instructed its member to avoid using AI technology from China's DeepSeek. And then I read a comment saying the military already has their own ChatGPT. So that way, it's closed off from the outside, right? Obviously, the military doesn't want, that stuff getting out on what they're using GPT for. Because, of course, if you're just typing in stuff into DeepSeek, I'm sure all of that goes back to China, right? Or at least the information they want goes back to China. So I thought that was interesting. U.S. Navy bans use of DeepSeek due to security and ethical concerns, right? Of course. And then we got Alibaba releasing AI models, says it surpasses DeepSeek. And I was looking into this, and then I was laughing because I saw a comment and said Temu ChatGPT, and I was like, oh, that's great. Yeah, looking forward to Temu AI. I feel like one of the comments said, I feel like China is going to do a staggered release of this one's better than the last so they can tank tech stocks. The Kendrick Lamar method, yep. They said it outperforms DeepSeek version 3, not DeepSeek R1. Okay. So maybe it's not as powerful as the most. But there's other models, right? There's other models coming out. So it's interesting to kind of see where this goes with AI, where this goes with, because now that, we found that we can do it essentially for not that large of an investment, I see potentially startups going to be occurring in this sector even more than before, specifically trying to focus on, it would almost seem like efficiency at this point, right? Because it seems like if we just throw more and more GPUs at it, at some point it's not just going to get better. We need to become more efficient with what we're using. And it seems like China has at least started to figure that out. Which competition is good, right? I'm not a fan of Sam Altman. If you go on, just Joe Rogan has good and he has bad podcasts, but the one with Sam Altman, if you just listen to him, I'm like, this guy is like, he's just not even answering the question. I don't know. It's very hard to read him. I can't tell Just doesn't seem like he's for the people, if you will. So it's interesting to kind of see where this goes from here. All right. That's it. Let's get out of here. That's all the time we have for today. As always, please like, review, subscribe, leave a comment, share it with a friend. Disagree with me, agree with me, let me know. We have some great sponsors, Halfco Studios here, where I'm sitting. If you record a podcast in St. Louis, if you just need some help distributing it, posting content, posting reels, editing the audio, editing the video, they can take care of you, halfcostudios.com. And of course, as always, if you want the best damn marketing company on the planet, you can go there, vi.media. Once again, vi.media. Thank you, as always, for supporting the St. Louis podcast. We will be back next week with another episode and our 100th episode. It's going to be a good time. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Hey there, St. Louis podcast listeners. We've got some exciting news from our friends over at Farmers Insurance of St. Louis, led by the man, the myth, the legend, Mark Lee of Farmers Insurance. If you're looking for a job or to own your own business under a brand that everyone and their cousin is familiar with, Mark Lee with Farmers Insurance of St. Louis is recruiting insurance agency owners here in St. Louis for their Farmers Insurance Mentorship Program.
And as many of you are aware, Garrett and I have owned quite a few successful and award-winning businesses over the years. And in a past life, one of those was a farmers insurance agency out of Chesterfield, Missouri.
Eric and I know firsthand how hard it is to start a business under a brand that no one has heard of and convince consumers and businesses to trust that you're an authority figure in your industry.
And as many of you know, we own an award-winning marketing firm, Vi Media, the one that Garrett was just discussing. And building that company's reputation literally took years. We're still building it to this day, and it's been 8 years in the making. However, with the Trusted Farmers Insurance Agency name on the building, we got started when we started our Farmers Insurance Agency. The trust was already built and has been for 96 years.
And if you can't do math, that means Farmers Insurance has been around since 1928. Luckily, you don't need to be a human calculator to get rich as an owner of your very own Farmers Insurance Agency.
Nope. All you have to do is reach out to the one and only Mark Lee, the leader of Farmers Insurance in the greater St. Louis metropolitan area.
That's right. So ensure he continues to sponsor our show and your favorite podcast, the St. Louis Podcast, by quitting your job today and calling Mark Lee. I wouldn't even wait for him to answer your call. Call your boss now, quit, and become your very own business owner.
Visit insurancecareerstl.com. That is insurancecareerstl.com. Should we spell it out?
Yes. It would
INSURANCE. Career, CAREER, STL.com. Insurancecareerstl.com. Go there now.